pronunciation don't fail me now. Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the new album from Arca. KiCk 1. I'm told this album's gonna be like in a series of 4, so let's go with KiCk 1. Arca. It's been a minute since I've talked about her. Many years ago, I covered her self-titled album when that came out, and it turned out to be one of my most popular videos ever, and one of my most controversial ones too. I'll link that in the description. I'm sure this video will definitely go over better with people. So as a recap, Arca is one of the most out there experimental and yet still highly popular artists currently working in electronic music, and my thoughts on her previous work have been a little all over the place. Her debut album, Zen, was excellent, and has continually kept me coming in over the years with its deeply unsettling but hauntingly beautiful depths of synth experimentations. I highlighted it as one of my favorite albums of the entire 2010s decade, and I still fully stand by that. It holds up. And then her follow-up, Mutant, that project was good, but didn't really resonate with me nearly as much. Its experimentations got a bit too oblique for my tastes, started to run together, and just kinda left me feeling more ambivalent. Not to mention the project really could have stood some trimming down. And then her self-titled project brought in her own vocal performances, which honestly just really rubbed me the wrong way. Her near operatic delivery made me feel like I was in church or something, and it was just really unsettling, even if tons of people made sure to let me know how important it was that I knew this was an intentional decision on her part. It was unsettling on purpose. Or this is just the way she sings. Why is that even a criticism? Whatever the case, it still didn't really make me want to come back to it any more than I did before. It still had its moments though. I remember the track Desafio being great, and there were other standouts sprinkled around, but yeah, I haven't listened to it since it dropped. Zen was the only project of hers that's really stuck with me in the long term. The rest I could still respect, but just didn't really have fun listening to. Oh yeah, and there's also her work with Bjork. She co-produced a few tracks on Vulnicura and the vast majority of Utopia, though admittedly neither of those are among my hugest personal favorite Bjork projects either. But yeah, Arca's done plenty of other production work for FKA Twigs and Kalela and others, you get the idea. But now she's obviously come out as trans, non-binary, been a lot more open about her gender identity and self-presentation, I guess. I didn't really know what to expect for this new one. Her previous projects have had a pretty recognizable style to them. Wasn't sure how much she was going to be sticking to them, especially given all the guest features, from Bjork again to Rosalia and Sophi, and I don't know who Shy Girl is, feel free to scream at me about that. But, I guess what I've heard of those other singers, they sound like they would probably work well in Arca's usual style, and in some cases I already know have been. But, whatever. What did we get with KiCk 1? Apparently Arca has become the Latin music's Sophi equivalent. This project is a noticeable shift in sound for Arca, one that's a lot more centered around her vocals, yes, more so than the self-titled, where she's singing a lot more, even rapping, and over these instrumentals that are sometimes super pummeling and intense, and sometimes kind of more melodic and atmospheric, but definitely never both at the same time. And also much more frequently the former. The more poppy blend alongside these super noisy and in-your-face styles just hit the exact same note for me that Sophi's product did back in the day. I'm not about to come out and say that this project is a ripoff. I mean, given Sophi's direct lead on this album, I kinda doubt she wasn't at least a pretty heavy influence. But first of all, that kind of super abrasive sound has already been a part of Arca's style for quite a while. Not to mention the ingredients that go into this particular project are different. You can still hear hallmarks of Arca's older sounds peeking through in the mix occasionally. There's even a hint of reggaeton in the mix thrown in there at a few isolated points too. But the overall final effect was basically the exact same as product. That is to say, I think this project is its place. I'm sure plenty of people who watch my stuff are gonna really love it, and I can certainly give it my recommendation. But at the same time, no, it was not really for me. Not the kind of thing I see myself coming back to listen to on my own time after this video goes up. Kind of hard to articulate why it doesn't work for me specifically. I guess this kind of stuff just makes me feel like my personal space is being invaded. Like someone is just running around and losing their shit while remaining within 3 feet of wherever I happen to be. The kind of thing where all my reflexes are telling me to just back away. But by the same token, I also respect what she's doing. I don't think there's anything wrong with what she's doing. I know there's a history of this kind of music that I've obviously heard before. I get that it's trying to be provocative and in your face, and it does not give a fuck about what you and I or anyone else thinks about it. I believe she even says that herself on the opener. And that reflexive feeling of, this is a bit much and I'd like to go somewhere quieter, I get, is probably the whole point. I'm not supposed to be comfortable while listening to it. Still doesn't mean I enjoy it anymore, though. I guess the way it mostly turned out was the more melodic and atmospheric tracks generally turned out to be favorites, while the more intense and wild percussive bangers tended to get that kind of reflexive backing away reaction I described. I mean, for instance, you got the album's opener, Non-Binary, which, I think the message in the lyrics is really cool. Like, it's about how she feels freer with her new gender identity, and she's like, bitch, what you think of me now? I don't give a fuck what you say. Great for her that she seems like she's in a better place now than she was before, and it certainly works well as a mission statement for this album. But actually, listening to it, you got her rapping, going over all these crashing percussive synths and gunshot reloading, and, I mean, I guess it's cool. It's just not particularly musical, save for that random synth passage at the end that doesn't really fit with anything. And the instrumental is kind of bare bones, even if it is very loud and bombastic in moments. And Arca's own vocals were kind of annoying, especially that tee-hee-hee bitch at the very end. It's a track I can respect, I like the message of it, but I don't particularly enjoy listening to it. Other tracks like KiCk and Machote had a little more melody in their instrumentals, even if still equally as bombastic, and I thought Arca's vocals still kind of came off as grating. Time also had a bit of a poppier slant to it. It kind of had this shiny electro-pop feel to it. Maybe a tiny bit Anna-Meredith-ish, I guess. I wanted to like it more, but something about that filter that Arca put over her voice made this track feel a lot more generic and watered down than I would have liked. The project didn't really draw me in until the track Calor, which had all these echoing pianos going up against Arca's trademark blend of metallic melodic synth blares and percussion and her more impassioned singing. And the tune underneath was pretty satisfying too, that was good. And the track with Bjork afterwards, that was really nice. The usual blend of dramatic and abrasive melodic synths were a great fit for both Bjork and Arca singing. They worked really well against each other. This was probably my favorite track in the bunch. Watch with Shy Girl was cool, I guess. Probably my favorite of the atonal percussive bangers on here. Shy Girl's rapping was pretty solid and fit the instrumental pretty well. And KLK with Rosalia, another one I wanted to like more. Rosalia's vocals were nice, but the usual abrasive drilling synths going up against a typical reggaeton beat was a pretty big turnoff for me. That beat made this track feel more like something I'd hear on the radio, even though this never would be played on the radio. And yeah, I'd still probably take this over the reggaeton that actually gets popular these days. I can easily see why everyone else would find this refreshing, and that more experimental and noisier element to the instrumental would help make it stand out so much more from the crowd. Just still kind of a no thanks for me. Then we got two of the most grating tracks in the bunch. Rip the Slit, probably the most grating of all of them, thanks to Arca pitching her voice way up, and boy did that really get under my skin. And on the track with Sophi, La Chi, I suppose the instrumental was a bit more layered and interesting, but Arca's repetitive yelling, Manello, 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 I don't get it. But then we close with two more of the best tracks in the bunch. Machote reprises the progression of string pads from the track Wound off her Zen album, and boy is it a breath of fresh air to hear that show up here. I even think the poppier repurposing of this track made for a really interesting and satisfying and just all-around gorgeous mix. That track was great and another major favorite. And the finale, No Queda Nada, was pretty solid too. Kinda reminded me of the vocal tracks from her self-titled with her almost operatic voice returning over some really dramatic synth pads. I gotta say, the irony of the element I least enjoyed from her self-titled showing up again on this album and consistently ending up on all my favorite tracks here. I guess I need to give the self-titled another chance now. But yeah, that's KiCk 1. And look, on the whole, this project was just not my thing at all. It had 4 tracks I really liked, which is definitely something, but the rest I mostly found to just get on my nerves more than anything. And not to mention, while it's technically not quite like other things I've heard before and has plenty of interesting ideas, it's not nearly as out of the box or strange as previous projects of hers. I mean, the main influence here was pretty obvious. But I feel inclined to be nicer to this project because I totally understand the appeal and why people would really be able to get into it so much more than me. All the things I talk about being a big turnoff for me, I can easily see being the main draw of the project for other people. I remember going through Sophi's music years ago when I reviewed Oil of Every Pearls on Insides. I still prefer that album over this one just because it was more tuneful and had more interesting ideas, even if this was probably better produced and mastered. But I imagine the appeal is very much similar for most people. I'm consistently reminded of Sophi tracks like Pony Boy and Lemonade and When I Hear This, and while I may not enjoy either of those tracks much myself, I totally get why other people do, and that all applies to this album as well. I can still respect what Arca is doing here. But the main appeal for Arca on me personally was always her formless and frightening melodic ambient instrumental soundscapes, and I got little to none of that here. Though there was still a little bit of it left if I looked in the right places. And even in the most intense moments, it's still pretty easily recognizable as being her style. So, I guess take that all as you will. I'm probably never gonna listen to this again, but if you want some intense bangers with that queer transgender energy and also with that Latin edge that more characterizes Arca's background and personality, give this a shot. I'm sure everyone else is gonna enjoy it a lot more than I did. But me personally, I'm overall just feeling a solid 6 out of 10 on it. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. Leave the comments in the comment thing down there. Shout out to my Patreon supporters. There are some people you want to add yourself to that list or make me review something. Link to my Patreon is in the description. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.